most developed countries in the world have had a strong nuclear power base.
The most prevalent and mostly used technology worldwide is light water reactors.
Today, the law prohibits private sector or even state entities from entering into nuclear power. They are not allowed to own and operate nuclear plants. So I think changing that law is paramount.
In the year 2010, if somebody would have told that reliable nuclear power is available in the range of 5 to 7 rupees, nobody would have accepted that number.
People often associate nuclear with the weapon. First time we learn about atomic energy when we maybe in class 3 or 4, we read about Hiroshima and Nagasaki and not about the peaceful use of nuclear.
We need power. We have a land constraint. We are not China. We are not Russia. We are not the United States, where the land to man ratio is entirely different.
Hello and welcome to Mandala from Outlook Business. It's a platform where policymakers and industry stakeholders come together to decode complex issues that are important for the growth of India. I'm Neeraj Thakur, the editor of Outlook Business, and today we would be discussing the issue of India's nuclear mission. To discuss this important issue, we have with us a stellar panel that includes Mr. Anil Razdan, who is former Secretary Government of India. Then we have Mr. Ajay Talegaonkar, Technical Member of Appellate Tribunal for Electricity. Then we have Mr. Anujesh Dwivedi, Partner Deloitte India, and Dr. Arunendra Kumar Tiwari. He is Fellow Electricity and Renewable Division Energy Program of TERI. Welcome to Mandala, everyone. Mr. Razdan, I would like to begin with you. You are the most senior person on this panel, and as just before this discussion started, I just told you that you are the institutional memory of India's energy sector, because you have seen so much, the transition of India's energy sector, and the topic is so important today. I just want to understand from you, the issue of nuclear is very, very complex and very politically charged as well. There is a politics in it, there is geopolitics in it. And how do you see, because from the time of Mr. Homi J. Bhabha till date, we have managed to add only 8.8 gigawatt of energy, even though we wanted to do much more than this thing. Where do you think we remain stuck as a country? Do you think it was just because of policy, or there were other issues involved as well?
It's a very pertinent question. Nuclear power is associated with not only broadcasting as in waves in your profession, right, or in print. It is associated with a technology which has more than one use. Whereas electricity is the one that you are talking about today, essentially. There is the military side of it. Right. There's also the medicine side of it. There is the agriculture side of it. So it's a very, very versatile technology. And the technology holders are not keen that others join the club so easily. Or those who join remain tied to their apron strings in some form or the other. It has a destructive component and a history also. Unfortunate. So it's more than a dual-use technology. And wherever politics creeps in, or power rivalry, I should say, power of a different sort, not electric power, there are many factors and constraints which will determine whether those who have the technology want others to have it or not. And they will try, or history has shown, to trip you somewhere or deprive you of an essential component till you are fully sufficient yourself. Now, India has been moving on the path of, from the time of Homi Bhabha, to be independent in its own way, of course, you had to collaborate with somebody who was using that technology in the past. But seeing India's vast energy needs and land constraint,
Right.
nuclear technology should have been a natural choice. And I wish we had grown much faster. I wish in the times when we could have expanded, we should have expanded. But unfortunately, we did not. And today, this technology is pretty expensive in a way. You need a lot of capital for it. There are also some safety requirements which has prevented this technology from being dispersed widely. Of course, it is used extensively, even, for example, your radioactivity in your scanning machines, in your X-rays. But unfortunately, the precautions that ought to be taken there are not taken at all times. But here, luckily, India has had a very good safety record. And there have been moments, for example, when I was in the Department of Atomic Energy, like the Chernobyl incident,
Right.
where you cannot, it showed you that you cannot take a risk beyond what is permitted, like in aviation. Then say Fukushima,
Right.
you tried to save on safety features,
Right.
redundancy, seeing the third level of safety or something like that. So there are associated challenges with this technology which has prevented its widespread use.
Right.
But be that as it may, the most developed countries in the world have had a strong nuclear power base, whether it be US, whether it is Soviet Union, later Russia, even France. In fact, one country which I was going through the emissions contribution of leading countries of the world. And France's emissions are much lower in terms of percentage as compared to many other countries even smaller than it. And I think the primary, I should say the laurels should go to their vast contribution of nuclear power in there. Sorry. It has the strengths of providing you round-the-year power. It's not weather dependent.
Right.
But there's also a constraint that you cannot alter the amount of energy that you are generating from the system. Like some of the other sorts.
Right.
Example, hydro has that tremendous advantage.
Yeah.
Yet you can vary your thing. So it's an ideal use for energy storage today.
Yeah.
You can store, release when you want to release. Thermal, you can play around a bit, not too much, but still you can play around with your factors of production. And every country was owing to some propaganda against nuclear power, not prepared to go in for that. Because there have been some antagonists also of this power, and not necessarily well-intentioned,
Yeah.
because it can displace other competing commercial interests. Let's face it.
Right.
Whether it is coal-based power, not only the raw material, but equipment manufacturers. There is also your gas-based power, people who want to sell more gas. So there are various factors that go into it. But yes, it is a technology which cannot be handed over to a novice. It has to follow strict regulations and those practices which are well recognized. You have to follow the safety norms which are approved by the International Atomic Energy Agency.
Right.
There ought to be, I think, greater inspection, open to inspectors, but unfortunate that we have not harnessed it to the extent that we ought to. There are also nuclear materials,
Right.
which are not freely available. And that has, over the years, become a kind of a trading commodity by power brokers in the world. So that is one of the factor, I think, among some of the others, which has stopped nuclear power from pertaining the amount of strength that it ought to attain.
Right. As Mr. Rajan, you suggested, so many reasons you have given that why India could not increase its nuclear power production over the last 8 decades the way it should have, or the way we wanted to. There was politics in it, then technology was also an issue, and there's so many issues. But now that India is the fastest growing economy in the world, and there's a lot of pressure to produce more and more energy, because any powerful nation, any developed nation, the first thing that they achieved was, I would say, since the 20th century, was energy security. If you are not secured in terms of getting your energy, you would never be developed, because there will always be scarcity. There would be in India, so many villages do not get electricity despite having connections, because and a lot of people, they just cannot study at night. While we understand that the current government ensured that every village now has the electricity connection, but still power outages are there, especially during the peak power season. So India has to look towards new energy sources. Renewable energy has not turned out to be anywhere in the world the way it was conceptualized, because solar is not available throughout the year, wind is not available throughout the year, and it is very erratic. On the other hand, nuclear energy can meet those demands. But at the same time, of course, there are vested interests. I would like to come to you, Arunendra. How do you think, your experience of, what is the mood like at the global stage with regards to nuclear energy? We know, so many private companies in the US and Europe, they have begun to invest once again in the nuclear energy sector. But when it comes to India, and India's positioning in the global high table, where do you think would be the challenges coming from?
Okay, so nuclear has seen a resurgence in last 4 to 5 years, specifically after COP26.
Right.
Then during the COP26, a special group and the discussion started around nuclear. And all of this started because of the growing demand because of the data centers. So these data centers, they require reliable power up to 99.99% reliability. And that is where the nuclear power, it gives you round the clock reliability. So these are the demand centers, and globally after COP26, a lot of countries came together to form a group and work on nuclear because of its reliability. In India also there is a lot of interest, and that is why we have launched our nuclear mission, and the reason is because of the data centers only.
Yeah. All right. I would like to come to you, Mr. Televankar. The world needs nuclear energy now. India needs it, and technology is the most important aspect of it. And in India, there has been a debate over the 3-stage nuclear power reactor technology. Would you like to explain this technology to our viewers? What are these 3 stages of nuclear power reactor technology, and where are we as a nation? Because there is a debate with regards to the new age, these modular reactors. And as a country, where do we stand, and what are the challenges in making that choice?
Sure. So this our 3-stage nuclear program was actually envisaged by Dr. Baba long back.
Right.
And he had a vision which was actually, if you see, even now it is relevant. It is more relevant for today when we need energy security, and I will explain you how it is more relevant. Presently, we are at the first stage when we are operating pressurized heavy water reactor, what we'll call PHWR. Here we use actually natural uranium, and one of the byproduct of natural uranium is plutonium also. So this will become input for our second stage, which we are about to enter. Our PFWR, HDR reactors prototype is already fuel refueling is going on in Kalpakkam, and maybe shortly we will see that second stage starting, where plutonium will become our input, and then we will get, with the thorium blanket, we will get uranium-233, which will become input for third stage. So what is actually effectively we are doing is that we have a vast sources of thorium.
Right.
We hold about 25% of world's thorium resources, India.
Right.
So thorium will be our real hero of energy security in the long term. So if, of course, it's a long-term process. We are in the first stage, second stage we are entering. Third stage, maybe it will take 20-25 years when we reach that stage. But once we reach that stage, then we will be effectively use our thorium to produce uranium-233, and that is a perpetual kind of thing, because that reactor will produce uranium-33 again. So that is an endless supply of
That's a recycling.
Yeah, that's a recycling again and again. So that's why I said that thorium will be our real hero in the long-term energy security.
How far do you think we would be able to reach that level of technology development?
That may take around maybe 25 years more. That's my understanding, because we are, as I said, we are just entering into second stage now, the actual prototype. But we have developed test reactors. So we have tested all those things at a smaller scale. So it is only thing is that scaling it up at a bigger scale. That's the only challenge. But I'm sure our scientists will be able to do it. So that's the part of this technology. Now, other part is that, having said that, PHWR is our own technology, ingeniously developed and all that. But the most prevalent and mostly used technology worldwide is light water reactors.
Right.
And that too, what we call a particular type of it is called PWR, pressurized water reactors. So about 85% of the world's reactors are of that type only. Only 10% are PHWR and 5% are maybe some other technologies. That's because PWRs are very easy to operate. So my guess is that once the private sector comes in, they would like to get into PWRs rather than PHWR. PHWR is complex to operate because you have to do refueling as you operate. You are actually doing online refueling, whereas in case of PWR, maybe you shut down maybe after 18 months or so and remove 1/3 of fuel and refuel it again. I mean, it depends on usage. But that's basically one reason. But there are many other things. It is easy to operate. So, but that technology has to come. Our Kudankulam, which is being given by Russian aid, which is being built, it is also of PWR type. So once we open it up, maybe we will get more PWR technologies, but that we will have to go get abroad. I believe that BRC is developing our own PWR technology also. So once that is available, then we can use that also. But otherwise, maybe initially we will have to experiment with maybe partners abroad somewhere. You have to get this technology. Cost may be a factor, but what I understand is that most of the suppliers who are willing to supply to India in future are also looking for indigenization, because they are aware that if they build the plant there or build the component there and supply in India, they will not be able to match the cost, I mean, that we are doing with PHWR. So most of them, I believe, have plans to set up their shops in India, or they have identified some partners with whose help they will be building the components in India. So that's the second part of this story. And then obviously we are working on advanced reactors also. Our current efficiency is about 30% or so. But worldwide, new technologies are being tried, like gas-cooled reactors or molten salt reactors. They will have efficiencies of the order of 40% as compared to 30%. So those are also being experimented. Now, as far as SMRs are concerned, SMRs are basically, we started with the small reactors. The first reactors which were built in US were 50 megawatt of weight. What is added is word modular. So there are various attributes which are given to them, SMRs. They are said to be walk away safe. They are very safe. It is said that they are factory built, so you have to just assemble. They are modular in the sense They are very safe, as I told you. They don't need site preparation. But we have to be very cautious and careful that whether all these attributes will be available and at what timeline.
Right.
So whatever literature survey we had done, when I was co-chairing that co-chair of that committee, which Ministry of Power and Department of Atomic Energy had constituted to give a roadmap of 100 gigawatt. We found that presently only maybe 2 or 3 reactors, we have so-called modular reactors are operating, and maybe 4 or 5 may get commissioned in the next 4 or 5 years. But the actual real commercial scale SMRs, they will be available maybe in mid 2030 only, maybe 2035 or something.
Right.
So till that time, they're all at maybe 60, 70 designs are being experimented worldwide.
Right.
So we don't know. And then whenever it comes, I feel that our demand will be increasing so much. Like we have a Viksit Bharat mission, and our plan is to have $30 trillion economy by 2047.
Right.
So we need GDP growth rate of 8%, 9%, and maybe matching growth in electricity. So we need bigger reactors, which gives economies of scale. So for grid scale, perhaps we will need big reactors, but maybe for captive use, and where we use like multiple uses, like you can produce hydrogen also, you can produce steam also for industrial processes. Their SMRs may be of useful for data centers where you need so much of reliability that you need power source in your backyard.
Right.
Then you can have SMR at your own location. But I feel up to next 10 years or so, mostly we'll be doing bigger units.
All right. So the debate is that whether we should go for SMRs, which would be available, tested SMRs would be available somewhere in mid-30s. And we have a very huge target to achieve. The target is 100 gigawatt by 2047, if I'm right?
Yes.
Yeah, so huge target from 8.8 gigawatt to 100 gigawatt, especially in a sector which is so politicized and so charged up. Relying on a technology which is still being evaluated world over, that would be a challenging thing. But Anujesh, I would now come to you because as Mr. Talewalkar said that, maybe SMRs may work out in like for smaller private sector where, they can have those data centers can have a small modular nuclear reactor in their backyard to produce that power. And Indian government is actually now in this winter parliament session, they would be bringing in an amendment, Nuclear Energy Amendment Act, where they would want to allow the private sector to be setting up their own power plants. As someone who interacts with the private sector, what do you think would be the first requirement or first few requirements of the private sector to even think of getting into this domain?
I think you already mentioned it. Today the law prohibits private sector or even state entities from entering into nuclear power. They are not allowed to own and operate nuclear plants. So I think changing that law is paramount. And once the law is changed, I think their ability to source technology is going to be really tough. In India, the indigenous technology is owned by NPCIL. The global technology suppliers are again, having issues with the legal setup in India regarding civil nuclear liability. So I'm presuming at some point the civil nuclear liability or the suppliers of technology will also have to be abandoned unless it is being amended in the same draft that you are referring to. I think these are paramount changes, and I think in the immediate future, they would in all likelihood go for the pressurized heavy water reactor that Mr. Talewalkar was mentioning. And for that to happen, the technology should be available at a reasonable cost. And private sector also wants a lot more certainty to take major investment decisions. And today, if projects are taking 12, 13, 15 years to get commissioned, I don't know in which framework will they be able to sell such power to DISCOMs. Right. DISCOMs are now undertaking a resource adequacy study and coming up with their power procurement requirement on a short-term, medium-term, long-term basis. And long-term is 4 to 5 years. Nowhere we are talking about 12-year time frame. So what is the framework in which a power plant that is going to get commissioned in 12 years is going to be sold is something that has to be looked into. In UMPPs, and Mr. Razdan will know this very well, a lot of effort was done to reduce the risk of the private sector.
Right.
And sites were identified linkages were established, clearances were taken, and then the appointment of the private sector was done. If something like that could be achieved for prospective nuclear
No,
power
but even
plants.
UMPPs did not succeed. That's the problem. There was so much of problem with regards to, I was a power correspondent at that time, 4 UMPPs were awarded. I think today only 1 is functional, maybe, but even so much of trouble was there.
So maybe let us look at case 2, method of power procurement as an example. Something like that will be very important here, because the gestation period to start construction is even longer than thermal power projects. Construction is usually starting in 6.5 years, and for private sector to go through that journey will be very, very tough.
Right.
So best that all that clearance process happens in the government ownership, in an SPV that is owned by APSU or under whichever entity it is. And the next challenge would be even clearance of the design of the boiler and the entire plant is taking a lot of time. So if technology providers, OEMs are allowed to get their designs cleared separately, and the operator is required to take a license only for his operations, I think that will also make the process faster and give more certainty to potential private sector players. There are obviously many more issues which we can discuss. Even on the lending side, cost of loan and all that, many things need to be done to make it more attractive for private sector players.
Right. I'll come back to Mr. Ajit Alegaonkar. Mr. Alegaonkar, you have been, in fact, Mr. Razan as well, you both have looked at state electricity boards and the DISCOMs, how bad their financial position is. Do you think they are in a position at the moment, from what they are today, to be able to deal with the nuclear energy? If suppose that supply starts coming in and they have to deal with it, because most of the times they do not have the mechanism to deal with complex power selling structures.
No, you are referring to, them as a buyer or
As a buyer and then as a supplier as well, because they source it as well, because payments remain pending, so that's always a problem.
As far as the payment to generator is concerned, I think most of the issues have more or less been resolved through the LPS rules that have come.
Right.
So that, I think, concern should not be there as far as payment from DISCOM is concerned. Although I agree that still there's a lot to be improved, and improvement is taking place continuously. As far as DISCOM's financial position is concerned, AT&C losses have come down drastically as compared to what it used to be earlier. So there's improvement. Maybe we can feel that perhaps improvement should have been faster, but nevertheless, there's improvement is there. Now, what perhaps we have suggested in our report, that if you see is also there, that presently only central government and central government companies can set up a nuclear power plant.
Right.
So if we want to incentivize states also, so maybe they can be given a partnership, for example, like MPCIL and a state GENCO. They can join hands, and maybe then there will be more interest from state side also. Because currently sometimes there's a resistance to set up a nuclear plant. Obviously due to misinformation or whatever it is that about safety and all that. But I think once we give that freedom, in addition to private sector, if the state generating companies can also participate or partner with MPCIL, that would be a big help in this. So I think that should be done as a priority.
All right. Arunendra, I would like to come to you now just to discuss, because nuclear energy is going to be part of an overall energy bucket where we will have energy from coal and solar, wind and everywhere else. Even the waste management plants that would be there, waste to energy plants, they will also start supplying energy to the power grids very soon, because the government wants to have those kind of plants as well. What is the right mix of energy for nuclear in the overall bucket according to you, and to what extent it can be extended?
So TERI has been doing both power as well as energy modeling at India level, and the last modeling exercise we did in the year 2022, and for that particular modeling exercise, mostly the renewable was main focus, and nuclear was not even the policy scenario. Not even the policy scenario we have considered the nuclear. But we are again working on the model, and for a particular policy scenario we are running it, and in next 1 and 1.5 months we'll come up with the numbers, the optimum number required for nuclear as well. But we have gone through various studies done by other organizations. Recent one was by Rockefeller, and one more exercise was done by IIM Ahmedabad, funded by NPCIL. And most of these numbers come in the range of 150 gigawatt to 350 gigawatt, depending on the optimistic or the pessimistic modeling. Now, this is the required number of nuclear for demand, excluding these new demands which are coming from the data centers or the other sectors. So now if we want to add these demand as well, then the mid-century requirement would be anything more than 200 gigawatt, and which is twice the numbers which is planned by the government in the nuclear mission. So that is the range we can think of nuclear for the least cost. Recently, Terry organized one workshop where the chairman CA said that last year the cost of supply of power has started going up actually in India. Okay. Yeah. So with the nuclear coming in, that's the only possible way to reduce the overall cost of supply, because now, because of the curtailment in the renewables, the storage requirement, the overall cost of supply has started going up.
Right. So what, according to you, Arunendra, would be the cost of nuclear energy, going by global standards?
So as of now, if we see, the cost of supply from the nuclear is anything between 1.5 rupees to less than 4 rupees.
Okay.
But now, if we are going by the latest numbers, it can go up to anything in between around 15 rupees.
15 rupees per unit.
Yes. But see, few years back, let's say in the year 2010, if somebody would have told that reliable nuclear power is available in the range of 5 to 7 rupees, nobody would have accepted that number.
Right.
Okay. But today, any DISCOM will accept 5 to 7 rupees reliable nuclear power.
Right.
So right now we are talking about something which will come in between 35 to 40. In the year 2035 to 40. So going by the number and the way the cost of supply has started going up, even 15 rupees power is acceptable. So last year I was working in Kerala in one of the fertilizer industry, and cost of supply of power to that particular industry by KSEB was less than 8 rupees, but they were operating their own captive power plant, which is costing them more than 13 rupees because of the reliability, because one shutdown cost them more than 5 crore rupees. So there are industries, steel, cement, data centers, they can't afford shutdowns. The cost of one shutdown is more than what we are talking about. So that is where the private sectors pitch in. They are ready to pay 13, 15 rupees today. And we are talking about 10 years down the line. They are ready to pay more than this in 10 to 15 rupees today, if the reliable power is supplied to them. So that is why private sector participation is key for the success of nuclear power in the country.
Can I add to what is it? Yeah, just one thing, that like CA had done a preliminary estimation of 2047 command, and as I said that it will be about 2100 gigawatt. That is what our installed capacity will be at that point of time. And if we take 100 gigawatt of nuclear, it will still be less than 5%.
Yes.
So even today it is less than 2%. So it will not be still a big chunk as such, first of all that. And then coming to cost, present day cost of PHWR, that our own technology that we are talking about, is about 15 to 16 crores per megawatt at present day cost. If we work out the tariff based on that, it is about 6 rupees on an average.
Quite affordable.
Maybe give and take. Yeah, so it is not very high. Yeah, obviously if there is a delay in construction, and then obviously IDC increases, and then capital cost increases, then it may go up to maybe slightly higher than that. So it is not that high as we think. As far as PWR is also concerned, that what is being built in Kudankulam with the help of Russia is supplying that technology that we have discussed. There also, the first 2 units were very cost effective. Thereafter, then what happened that some other crisis happened, then we know that Ukraine issues came up and all that. So that affected the supply of parts and something. Now that cost is still, I believe, around 30 crores or 35 crores per megawatt. So if we build that, and it is all coming from there, if we start building it, some of the components here in the innovation, let's say they bring cost to say 22 or 25 crores per megawatt, even for PWR. That tariff also we have worked out in our committee report is there. It will be about 6.5. So it is not that high, provided the best, thing is that we have to control the project timelines and complete the project well in time so that the cost remains what we are envisaging. If there is a time delay, obviously, tariff will increase.
So no project was completed as planned, and the cost of plant was at least twice which was planned initially. So
we have to factor that thing in. But anyway, in India, that's a norm that no government project ever gets completed on time. Cost overrun is...
See, I think the Kakrapar project was done in good time.
Okay.
And there Dr. Anil Kakotkar was closely associated with that. But see, there are a few uncomfortable questions which we have to keep in mind. And that is, if pollution has a penalty, and what harmful emissions you are doing, how many people you are displacing, and whether India has the luxury of that land quantity to install some of the renewables, I think nuclear is still a good option. And one of probably the constraints in why it did not pick up in the past was that there was great variation in our power requirement through the 24 hours of the day. I remember the eastern region used to, when I was a joint secretary even in the ministry, flood a lot of power, and the frequency would cross 52, 53 till we brought in a frequency control. So you see, if tomorrow the laws get strict, firstly that those who are polluting will have to pay a cost for it. Number two, the change in living style and patterns, I think, are going to demand 24-hour power supply.
Right.
Firstly, we talked about, these energy guzzlers like data centers. You have now electric vehicles. A large number of them, I suspect, are going to be charged at night. When people come back home, that's when the surge is going to come. You also have a large air conditioning load, right? It is coming up in the country. So your base load power round the clock in these 3-4 activities alone, I think is going to ensure that a continuous source of cleaner power is required. Because certainly it is never going to be as economical as coal-based power or hydropower, but then hydro, we are more or less exhausting our capabilities unless we go in for pump storage, and multi-stage development also has displacement issues. And as I mentioned earlier, land is a tremendous constraint in India. And if you look at the density of land requirement for the different sources of electricity that are on the table, I think nuclear certainly will emerge as a very good contender for future power. Yes, the flip side is it has to conform to very strict discipline.
Right.
It requires a very stern management system. There needs to be no let up, anywhere, no compromise. And you perhaps cannot hand it over to a large number of players that are handling other forms of power without adequate controls, training and supervision. The point will come whether the health, safety, the other nuclear monitoring for emissions, this will continue to be a very strong area of attention. And the role of the AERB, I see, if the nuclear is to expand, will have to go up substantially. Right. The AERB will have to be strengthened. But if nuclear wants to come in, they must adhere to the promised timelines, because any delay is going to cost money. They are already on the fringes of affordability, of consumer power. So if nuclear comes, it must come with strict monitoring, timelines, supply channels open. And at the same time, I think we will still be dependent on import of materials. But that import is also a factor which we have to take into renewable energy, because storage batteries also so far have a large import component of critical minerals and some others, seeing the volume of our demand. So all in all, I think nuclear should be kept up at a good pace so that the industry develops in India. Now, how to disperse its ownership is something to be seen. Although many of us want that the ownership of plants should pass on to the private sector, I'm not sure whether strategic interests and particularly conflicts around the world, sabotage,
Right.
we have an unfriendly neighborhood,
Yep.
whether all this will allow us to give the amount of freedom that each one of us would like to give.
Right. Mr. Tarzan, as you mentioned that, plants need land. I mean, that's the problem with solar as well, because how much land you need for setting up solar. But at the same time, nuclear plant, I don't think any citizen of India who knows what can go wrong with nuclear energy would want to live in the vicinity of a nuclear power plant. And the government is undertaking studies for NTPC to convert 10 of its power plants into nuclear power plants. They're coal-based power plants currently. But when we spoke with some experts for our cover story on nuclear energy, we just were told that, a large number of those power plants are now in, people have started living around those areas. So what would be the way out? This question is for you, Arunendra.
Sorry. Lekti, you've raised a very relevant point. I have never been a votary of those power plants, thermal power plants, which are located in today's townships and cities to be sites for nuclear. I would say that we should, before we stabilize everything in terms of safety controls, etc., in this expansion, we should select mining areas, current areas, which have a natural exclusion zone, which you normally require for a plant. And why not in some of the underground mines, or which we are abandoning in those caverns,
Right.
you install the plant there, because we have an unfriendly neighborhood. We have saboteurs amongst us.
Right.
We have those sites also because they're large mining areas. And their own captive requirement is pretty huge.
Right.
So I would go first for those sites which have a natural exclusion zone. Though they say with the new plants, probably with cladding of the Aurora type reactors, they might reduce the exclusion zone to about half the present limit. Very good news, but I would still prefer that when we launch this kind of program, get the experience, get the public confidence, put them in areas which are safe.
Right. All right, Arunendra, just the same question. I would just want to, have your perspective, because you are a think tank and you also understand how the civil society function. In the past, we have seen mass scale protests for different land acquisition projects, more so for the nuclear energy projects. Do you think the current political environment, or despite the fact that now we have a very strong government at the center, any government would be in a position to ensure that there are no mass scale protests? Plus, like, even if there are protests before you decide on a nuclear power plant site, can people be taken into confidence? Because we understand people do not want to give up their land, and if you tell them that a nuclear power plant is going to come up there, it's not about the land that is going to be taken up, it's also about the people who would be living in that area. So what is the role of the civil society in managing that thing?
So it has already started happening, because NTPC, initially they came up with some sites in Karnataka, and then Karnataka government asked them again to revisit the site and come up with the new sites.
Right.
So public perception is critical to any infrastructure project, and for the nuclear there are added challenges. And to solve this, government has been working, but if we want private sector participation, if we want to achieve 100 gigawatt of nuclear, we have to take help of other societies, academic institute like TERI. For messaging, for example, let's say two examples was given, both Fukushima as well as Chernobyl, accounting for less than 50 direct death. And even if we count the indirect death, the number is less than 500. And we compare that with the plant in Bhopal and the accident in Bhopal, that is, the comparison is, the difference is huge.
Right.
So all these incidents accounting for less than 50 death, direct death and indirect death also less than 500, with just one example, and so many industrial incidents happen globally.
Well, let me just cut you short. Both examples are not from India. That's why perhaps the number of deaths were less. Yes. The Bhopal gas tragedy happened in India, where, these, because India has this reputation of not being able to manage these kind of disasters.
Correct. But we have more than 25 fertilizers plant running after that also. So the thing is that we gave proper messaging to the people, and the similar thing has to be done for the nuclear as well, that it is safe, and it will give us reliable, round the clock, cheap power. So this not my backyard syndrome has to go, and for that the government has to take help of civil society, of academic institutes, of think tanks. So government has announced nuclear mission, but I don't see any money, anything allocated for changing the public perception. Now we should start with that first. We should invest on changing the public perception. So when Fukushima happened, 24/7 all news channels were showing that only. That has some memory in the people.
Right.
And if some sighting is there in your locality, people will definitely come together and will be against that. And for that to change, we need to invest on changing the public perception.
I just add just one or 2 points to that. I mean, because we are preparing the board, we are talking to most of the experts, and the same thing came out that, first of all, India's safety record is impeccable. I mean, of course, we don't need certificate from anyone, but IAEA, Director General, has more than once talked about safety record of India. That's first part of it. Secondly, there are various studies which I have gone through that, which shows that direct and indirect fatalities in nuclear is lowest as compared to any other technology, including direct and indirect also. Of course, any fatality is not acceptable. I mean, having said that, but the record shows that it is very safe in that respect. The problem is that, like Mr. Rajan started with the saying, that there's more than one use. So people often associate nuclear with the weapon. And then in the first lesson that we go to, first time we learn about atomic energy, when we maybe in class 3 or 4, we read about Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
Right.
And not about the peaceful use of nuclear. So, I mean, that start from there. So you have to, this messaging of safety has to go. I mean, that's what Mr. Tiwari was saying, that this message should go, and then it is responsibility of everyone who understand this issue, that it is very safe.
I think we have to develop that culture of safety, first of all. We talk about nuclear fears, but how many of us, while visiting an X-ray unit or even a dental X-ray, take even the basic minimum precautions? And whether those chambers are lead-walled, people are sitting just next to the wooden compartment, even in crowded streets.
Right.
It's not acceptable to me.
Yeah.
People have to be responsible. Fukushima, the Japanese population displayed tremendous discipline and mental preparedness. I've heard stories of people driving their vehicles out and observing the traffic signals, even in the evacuation. It had the epochal stories, but it did happen. Now, personally, I visited Japan just after the Fukushima incident. It was an international conference after I'd laid down office of power secretary. And I'd gone at the invitation of a friend who's heading the International Energy Agency area, who was Japanese. Now at night when I came to the hotel, I found the ceilings rather low, which are, you're not used to that, found a little claustrophobic. And secondly, I found that it's uncomfortably warm. Tried to sleep, but so I went out of the hotel, took a stroll for about 10-15 minutes. I got the cold air, got a little tired, came back and slept. I asked my Japanese friend the next day that your hotels are very uncomfortable. Why? It's such a prosperous country. He told me that post-Fukushima, the state has set a limit of 26 degrees on air conditioning. People have voluntarily set a limit of 28 degrees. Now that is, you see, a culture that has to be respected, and we, I dare say, in our country, how many people would have observed that limit? In fact, they would have violated it grossly on the other side. So it's public participation, public education. And I think respecting the technology and its frontiers and borders that we have to do. We are very happy increasing transportation, making Delhi and some of the other cities totally unlivable, like gas and dust chambers. Nobody's protested about that. I do not know how much damage is going to our lungs.
There are some people at India Gate.
You see, and
it is,
and people
talking about that.
as thought were touted that CNG is the safest technology, which it was not. And soon that slogan was taken off the buses that it's an extremely safe fuel. Oh, it is not. It's better to understand and educate people right from school days.
Right.
That culture gets imbibed in you as you grow up. But at a middle age, if you try and infuse that culture, it is too late.
Right.
And there'll be a lot of opposition. So society, and it works to the general good of society. It's not that it confined to this particular area. It's always good to know the facts, know your responsibilities, know what you have to do, and it begins at every home, and ends at the operator of the plant.
Right. I'll just pick it up from here, Mr. Razan, and we'll come to Anujesh. At the end of the day, the responsibility lies with so many people, including the people, like the common civilian, and also the plant operator. So civil nuclear liability has been a big issue, and that's the reason India has not moved forward in that thing. Now that we are looking at the participation of the private sector, what kind of limits do you think private sector would want to set for themselves when it comes to liability in case there is some sort of a disaster in future? Could you just quantify it, or maybe just lay down the terms that according to you that may create some sort of doubts in the minds of private sector participants?
See, I think the act that was passed earlier, 2010, that set a liability limit on the operator already, and beyond that, there was another limit under which the government could step in, and also there was a liability on the third party, civil liability under potential use of the law of torts or the common law, which could be imposed on the supplier of the technology, which made some of the suppliers uncomfortable. So I think liability for the operator in India is limited. The issue there is how many insurance providers are there in the country, and whether we have sufficient insurance providers providing insurance cover to if private players, if we are setting up so many plants at one time. So that would be the question. And obviously if there is any reason to go back to the supplier of technology for any claims from an operator's perspective, the global benchmark is that the relationship or the transfer of liability between the operator and the supplier is driven by the contract. If the supplier of technology has failed on delivering on the contract, if there is an issue with the quality, any lack of service which led to the disaster which has imposed civil liability on the operator, in that case, as per the contract between the supplier and the operator should have recourse. So that's the way it works globally, and I think that's the direction in which our potential amendments may also move.
All right. Mr. Razan, your view on the same thing?
I think there is certainly a requirement of more rationality in setting the liability limits. Probably the assurances on safety, etc., have to be more stringent at the manufacturing stage. You have to inspect, you have to have confidence at that stage, and also the kind of operators you are having operating nuclear power stations. You can't monkey around with this technology.
Yep.
You've got to be very strict in the kind of people who are deployed for its use, the inspectors. If this liability clause is to be diluted in the future, which industry and private sector would certainly like, I think correspondingly the role and the volume of inspectors and inspections, continuous monitoring may have to step up substantially. Because, for example, in a nuclear power plant, the kind of health monitoring which is done is exemplary. And there are hardly any cases of anybody in the nuclear establishment, entire establishment, who suffered kind of fatal illnesses or very wrongful exposures. It all depends on who is using that technology, how it is being monitored, administered. This is something which will have to accompany alongside, it's certain. But I don't think that it's a factor which should prevent this technology from being deployed. As I mentioned, there are so many positive factors. Where is the land?
Right.
Where is the continuity of supply? Where is the space for unlimited transmission lines and distribution lines? So, all in all, we have to learn to live with this technology. After all, you do not expect the same level of training from a pilot of an aircraft and an autocycle driver in Delhi. So, the two requirements are entirely different.
Right.
And then social education is most important, as well as public vigil and transparency. We do not even know today, in spite of the laws, which industry or which trade is polluting how much within the municipal limits of a town, or who is firing his furnace at night quietly under cover of darkness with high sulfur fuel, which may be emanating from some refinery,
Right.
from SARC route, unless it is separated, which I'm not sure. So, this is a vigil which is a 24-hour vigil, which must be done with this technology and should be done. And it can be done. That is my thing. If we have better solutions to the problem to provide the kind of continuous energy that we are looking for, by all means, choose them. But a country which is growing at the pace that we are growing, we need power. We have a land constraint. We are not China. We are not Russia. We are not the United States. We are not Australia. We are not Brazil, where the land-to-man ratio is entirely different.
With this answer, we will wrap up our discussion on India's nuclear mission. I would like to thank all my panelists for being part of this wonderful discussion, and we hope that our audience will enjoy the nuances of this difficult topic that we have brought to you through Mandala. Thank you very much for joining us today.